Hello and welcome to the Bhagavatam. Today we're going to talk about some difficult topics. We've all had times in our life when we didn't quite feel our best. We found our mind going berserk and out of control. Perhaps we were critical of others. Perhaps our mind was making us sabotage what was in our best interest. Like going for a walk or an exercise or something, and then you end up just sitting around and eating potato chips or watching TV. Yeah. Or perhaps it was causing you to destroy the things that are actually good in your life. For example, ruining friendships or ruining your relationship with a loved one. By saying things or doing things that you later on regretted. And later on you've wondered, why did I say that? What came over me? What was that? That wasn't like me. And even your friends and family may have pointed that out. Somebody else said that before, long, long ago. Christ, he said that of his murderers. He said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. That's an interesting statement if you've ever thought about it. They know not what they do. How is that possible? You see, he was asking for forgiveness for them because he understood a deeper principle, something that we are led to not believe in, something we're told is crap. The fact that there could be anything that was in charge of our mind. But we've all experienced times when we weren't in charge of our mind, and when something seemed to be happening through us or to us that wasn't of our best cognition or our thinking or our logic or even our emotions for that matter. And then we've repented or regretted such actions. But rarely do we wonder, why do such things happen? Yes, it could be your fault, but it could be that there are other unseen forces. Now, I don't want to pass the buck on to anything else and not let us take responsibility. I definitely feel we need to take responsibility for our actions, but we also need to be aware that there are forces that act upon us. Those forces could be seen or unseen, physical or non-physical. They could be the forces of what we watch on our TV and play in our video games, but they could also be unseen forces that we're not aware of and that our modern day science doesn't want us to acknowledge. But spiritualists have been talking about this for thousands of years, and as we'll come across in the Vedas today, there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. So these evil forces, as they're called, do try to influence our mind when we are not consciously guarding it. When we get drunk, when we get intoxicated, when we get angry, when we get anxious or depressed. And that's why spiritual teachers have always told us to stay away from those intoxicants. And that's why they've always told us to guard our mind very zealously. The inner battle of good and evil is a theme in most of our movies, but it's also in our scriptures and it's also in our lives. We're drawn to this idea the way a moth is drawn to a flame. So let's talk about it. Let's bring it up in the open. And hey, if you don't agree, that's perfectly okay. And if you do agree, that's okay too. Write your thoughts and ideas in the comments. I'd love to hear what you believe and what you think and what you've experienced. So let's talk about what is evil, what is good, and what can we do to protect ourselves. Join us on this grand adventure into the ancient wisdom of the Vedas, which were revealed to us through the wisest people that lived on this planet. So our narrative today begins with Indra. Now, a lot of times people think that gods of India, the demigods as we actually call them, this is Indra, that these are unique to India. But actually they're not. The same Indra can be found in Europe as well, under different names, under different guises, but the same weapon, the thunderbolt. We're going to get to know more about this thunderbolt today. We're also going to get to know a little bit about that hierarchy, how Indra is the is known to be the king of the demigods, but the demigods are not God. Let's be very clear. I've said this in many of our talks here, but for those of you that are new, just want to clarify that. And so Indra, the king of the heavenly planets. Now, we know of alien planets in terms of what our movies have told us, like E.T. and like, alien weird creatures coming from apparently from Mars or somewhere else. But that's not how the Vedas see it. The ancient Vedic texts talked about highly evolved beings living in planets far beyond ours. People who had developed a culture, a way of living that was far superior to ours, beings who were far more beautiful and had longer lifespans and lived incredible lives. And they said that if we behaved in very pious ways, we would be elevated to those heavenly planets. And if we engaged in bad karma or sinful acts, we'd go to what are called the hellish planets. And the hellish planets were not, places that you suffered forever, but were places where you went to, and now you could do just about everything you wanted to do, right? You want to engage in all kinds of acts that hurt others, because that's essentially what evil is the act of taking pleasure in the suffering of others. Whereas a spiritual act is where we want to uplift others from suffering. So one wants to drag you into suffering and deepen your suffering, and it takes pleasure in your suffering. And the other, that is the spiritual or the godly way, is to pull you out of suffering and see you become liberated and free from suffering once and for all. So that's the essential difference between these two paths that we will call good and evil. And all of them are an option. Neither is better or worse. It's possible that somebody wants to have the experience of being evil. And if somebody chooses that, the option is given and they can go for it as deeply as they want. And others may choose the path of being godly and experience the benefits of that. So there is no one way for everyone. Everyone is going to come here on this planet, and according to the level of their consciousness and what they're seeking, they're going to choose a particular path. You may like it, you may not like it. That's not going to change anything. They're going to do what they do, right? The psychopath, the tyrant like Hitler or any such person like that. There's this smaller and bigger degrees of these kinds of people. They're not going to be swayed by your goodness or by the fact that you're a kind, loving person or that you're spiritual or religious or any of that. They're going to do what they're going to do. But why do they do what they do? Why is it that a soul that is pure, godly, suddenly engages in nefarious, heinous acts of violence or abuse, or in some way tries to act against the best wishes or free will of another? Why does a beautiful soul gravitate towards evil? It's a very profound question, and one to which the only answer that can be given is free will. We have the choice. Why do we have the choice? You may ask. The choice is given to us because freedom of choice is the nature of the universe. It's not something that is an option. We are given choice because anything other than choice would be bondage, would be slavery, would be imprisonment, would be forced. If we were forced to act a certain way and had no choice, then we would be slaves, we would be robots, we would be puppets. And that is not the way, the divine path. The divine path is one to give you all choice, all freedom, and then see what you want to do. You as a soul get to choose. Do you want to seek God, or do you want to reject God? Or do you want something in between, right? All pathways are open. Do you want to engage in good deeds, or do you want to engage in evil deeds? All that is up to you. But The universe has been set up in a way that whatever you do, there are consequences, karma. And that karma will come to you, whether it comes to you immediately or it comes to you later, whether it comes in this life or it comes in another life. But it will come. And it's not like someone sitting on your shoulder and writing things down. No, the whole system's automated. Everything is recorded, just like we have with our computers nowadays. You know, your credit score, it's recorded. I mean, they record every little thing you buy and everything you do and every bit of income you make and every incoming and your outgoing is all recorded. In much the same way, the universe is set up by God to record all of that information. No one needs to personally do it. God would go crazy, right? Trying to record what 8 billion people on this planet did, what to say of millions of other planets. So, our story today with the Bhagavatam begins with King Parikshit asking a question from Shukdev. Clearly, Parikshit knew a lot of things that we don't know, so that he's asking questions that we don't know about, and so we'll learn. So he asks, why did the guru of the Devas means the demigods. Remember, we talked about beings that lived in the heavenly planets. So they're called the demigods, Devas. And this word Deva is actually in many languages in Europe, as I've come to understand now. I was listening to something in Lithuanian, and it's there. They have a word for Deva, same word. So it means the demigod. These are highly empowered beings given the role of being able to manage the affairs of the universe. So why did the guru, the spiritual master, the spiritual guide of the Devas, reject his own disciples? What offense did they commit? So he's asking the question of Shukdev, a great, highly evolved being. And Shukdev replies, the king of the heavenly planets, Indra, had become very proud due to his great opulences. You know, when we have a lot of wealth and we have a lot of power and we're like a king, and we're a king not just of a planet but of the universe, yeah, it's very easy to get proud. So due to those opulences, he transgressed the laws of Vedic etiquette. Let's take a look at what those laws are. Once, while sitting on the throne along with his wife Sachidevi, surrounded by devas and apsaras. Apsaras are the dancing girls. So they're watching all these dancing girls and this lovely music. And in that scene where he's sitting with all of his, the different demigods, not all, but a whole lot of them, his guru, his spiritual master, Brihaspati, appeared. Now, the etiquette in Vedic times is that the guru is considered the most important person in your life. He is the doorway to God. He is the one who guides you towards spirituality. And one who guides you towards spirituality is the most important person in your life, because spirituality is the most important thing you'll ever do in your life. So, when Brihaspati appeared, Indra saw him, but he did not rise to greet him or offer him a seat to show respect, as is custom, as was the Vedic etiquette. So Brihaspati could see the future. He was a highly evolved being, and he understood what was about to happen due to Indra's arrogance. He could have cursed Indra, but instead he left the assembly, all those people gathered there. He left in silence and he went home. Indra immediately understood the mistake he had made by disrespecting his guru, and he condemned himself in the presence of all those assembled. What do you do when you do something wrong? Do you try to cover up? Do you try to pretend like it never happened? You try to give excuses? Or do you own up to it right away? A highly evolved person understands immediately that he did something that's inappropriate or wrong, because we all do. It's not like any of us is free of wrongdoing. We will all make mistakes. We will all do stupid things. We will all say things that are not becoming of us. Sometimes it's because it's our mood. Sometimes because we are reactive. Sometimes it's because of all the pressures of life. But one who is wise does not bother to defend themselves. One who is wise immediately takes responsibility and sees the folly and error of his ways. So Indra condemned himself in the presence of all those assembled. He said, "What a regrettable deed I have committed because of my lack of intelligence and my pride in my material opulences. I was proud of a little opulence and polluted by false ego. I condemn my wealth and opulence." So he realizes he got right to the heart of the matter. He got see right to where the root of the problem was. And then he says, a king who does not respect another king, a Brahmin is a priest, or a saintly person, such a person has fallen into ignorance and is misleading people by directing them to the path of destruction and hell. You see, this is a high level of moral culpability, responsibility, which unfortunately our politicians lack in today's time. And it would be wonderful if they had it, but no, they've got to look good. They've got to pretend. They've got to, brush things under the carpet. They've got to act like they're above all fault and are holier than thou. But not Indra. Indra wanted to beg forgiveness, but Brihaspati disappeared. His guru disappeared. Indra lamented and couldn't find peace of mind. Meanwhile, the opposite of the devas are the asuras. The asuras they're called demonic. That's only because they are a group of people, many of them, who engage in activities that one would call sinful. So what are those sinful activities? Some of them might be even things that you don't think are sinful. For example, the eating of meat. It's the killing of animals and the eating of flesh. Civilized human beings don't do that. That is not a civilized act. And yet, it's become normal in today's time. Likewise, the abuse of children or the raping of women or so many other things that take place in today's time, these are all considered demonic activities. Crime of all sorts, just all the different ways in which we see people hurting each other, abusing each other. These are all signs of that demonic way of being. And that's an important distinction to make. Krishna makes that distinction in the Bhagavad Gita, where he talks about there is a divine nature and there is a demonic nature. And we can choose which one we wish to walk on and experience the consequences, of course. So meanwhile, this group of people that we refer to from now on as the asura. Sura means actually divine and asura is demonic. Okay? It doesn't mean they can't change from one to the other, but right now we're talking about these two groups. So the asuras, the demonic, following the instructions of their guru, see, even they have a guru, Shukracharya, equipped themselves with weapons and declared war against the demigods. Now you see, when they saw that the demigods were down, when their power was down, I believe I heard recently, that's what's happening between Israel and Hamas. So, I don't wish to get politics in here, but apparently Israel was down. They had sent a lot of their weapons out, so they were not quite in their full power, and the enemy took advantage of that. And the same thing was happening here. When the demigods were down in their power, when Indra had done something horrible and he was in a state of deep regret and they were feeling, disempowered, the asuras, the demons, they took advantage of the situation and attacked. The demigods were greatly injured and went to Brahma. Brahma is known to be the creator. And so they went to him for shelter and instruction. Now Brahma says to them, Brihaspati, the guru of the devas, is a highly evolved being and you have acted impudently toward him. This act has weakened you and the asuras have taken advantage of the situation. In the past, the asuras were weak because of their disrespect to their guru, Shukracharya. Now that they have understood their folly, they have become strong. And because they follow his instructions and worship him with great devotion, they have become very powerful. Even I cannot defeat them. So therefore, go to another sage called Vishwarupa and accept him as your guru. He is very pure and powerful. If you please him with your worship, he will fulfill your desires, even though he is inclined to side with the asuras. Asuras being the demonic. The devas followed the instructions of Brahma, With humility and devotion, they accepted Vishvarupa as their guru and asked for his help. Vishvarupa, with great humility, praised them by saying, "You are the exalted commanders of the entire universe." This highly evolved being is now praising those who have come to him to be his disciples. He says, "All of you are my superiors. I am your disciple and I have many things to learn from you. But I cannot refuse even a small request from you. I agree to be your priest." Vishvarupa, this person they now approached, protected the devas, the demigods, from the tactics of Shukracharya. Shukracharya was the guru of the asuras, the demons. And he gave them a protective prayer known as the Narayan Kwach. I'll explain to you in a few moments what that is. By this powerful mantra, he took away the military power of the demons. Now, I'm going to switch gears a bit. I remember going with a friend of mine who's a Christian, and we'd gone to this talk on the armor of God. Unfortunately, Christians don't know that 3,000 years before their Bible was written, in the Vedas, these same things had been talked about, but slightly differently. The context was different, but the idea was the same. So they talked about the armor of God, and this was from Ephesians 6, that is 10 to 18. And it says in there, "Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." So that's the actual verse. And then they talk about what that armor is. It's sort of metaphorical, this armor, and they talk of the belt of truth. So truth, being one of those things. It's like the belt, the breastplate of righteousness, the shoes, the gospel of peace. The shield is the shield of faith, and the helmet of salvation, the sword of spirit. Like this, they talk about the armor of God. Now, it's a concept, and it shows you that, yes, when there are evil forces, we need protection against them. The way the Vedas talk about it is through mantras. Mantra, M-A-N-T-R-A. Man means mind, M-A-N. And tra means to free. A mantra is there to free the mind. That's the ideal kind of mantra. There are many mantras for many purposes, but that's the ultimate goal of a mantra. So with the help of the mantra that Vishvarupa gave to the demigods, the devas, Indra was able to defeat his enemies, the asuras, and enjoy the opulence of the heavenly planets. But what was this mantra? It's something we can all learn from and benefit. Vishvarupa explained the mantra as follows. He says, if some form of fear arrives, by the way, fear arrives for all of us, right? There's so many situations where there can be fear. When you fall in love, you're afraid something could go wrong. When you're driving your car, you don't know something could go wrong. When you get a new job, you don't know something could go wrong. There's so many ways in life that things could go wrong, and sometimes they do. So we always live in fear. There's always some kind of fear sitting at the back of our mind, even if we don't have it in the foreground. So we try to be positive and we try to think good thoughts. And much of that is like a band-aid on a problem. The root of the problem is much deeper. So he says, if some form of fear arrives, one should wash one's hands and legs and then chant this mantra. And to help you understand this better or read it clearly, I'm going to put it on the screen for you. Om Namo Narayana. Om Namo Narayana. You can just say the Namo one time. I think I made an error there. But it's Om Namo Narayana. Om Namo Narayana. Okay? Om Namo Narayana. It's actually quite simple. It says here that one should sit silently facing the north. Now, by the way, if you forget these instructions, you can watch them again in the replay on the video on YouTube. It's all there. if you want to do it for yourself, because we do need ways in which to protect ourselves. I wouldn't doubt that at all. So Om Namo Narayana is an 8-syllable mantra. And he says, while chanting this, you should touch the eight body parts, starting with both your feet, then both knees, both thighs, your abdomen, your heart, your chest, your mouth, and your head. Then while chanting the mantra in reverse order, beginning with the last syllable, ya, one should reverse the process. Then there is a second mantra. So, by the way, just to go back over that for a moment, when I said there were 8 parts of the body that you touch, you recite the mantra on each part. Okay? You touch your feet, you say Om Namo Narayana. Then you touch your knees, Om Namo Narayana. You touch your thighs, Om Namo Narayana. Then your abdomen, Om Namo Narayana. Heart, Om Namo Narayana. Chest, like that. Okay? Then we come to the next mantra. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So now this mantra, he says here, you should start with your, so it's a 12-syllable mantra, and we're going to do it by touching 12 points on the tips of our fingers, okay? Starting with the index finger of the right hand, okay, till the index finger of the left hand. So we're going to go like this. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And you'll go Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This is your left hand now. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And then the thumb, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate, 2 parts of the thumb, up and down. Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And then on the other hand, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Like that. That becomes a total of 12. All right. And there's Om Vishnave Namaha. Okay, I think I'm maybe going too detailed, so I think if you can just do those 2, that would be great. And it does say here that I'll give you one more here that might be really useful if you want to really take this seriously. Om apavitra pavitro va sarva vastham gato piva yasmaret pundarik aksham sabhaya abhayantaraha shuchihi Shri Vishnu Shri Vishnu Shri Vishnu. Okay, so watch that in the replay. Maybe take a screenshot if you want to do it. What it's essentially saying is the Supreme Lord, is present when we chant this mantra. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the living entities, so this is a really interesting point that comes up here now. See, God, the living entity, us, the material energy, the spiritual energy, and the entire creation all appear to be different. At the same time, they constitute the Supreme One, the Supreme Being, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So those who are advanced in spiritual knowledge see unity in diversity. Let's go over that idea clearly. Unity in diversity. So there is diversity, right? The world, the different energies that make up the world, the material energy, the spiritual energy, God, the creation, the living entities. They're all different energies. It's not all matter. And unity in diversity. So in all this diversity, there is a unity. What is the unity? That unity because all of that together is God. You getting that? Okay. For them, and we'll take it one step further now, God's forms, names, so this is now the personal names and forms of God, and the attributes of God, and the decorations and pastimes are none different than the omniscient Lord who is present everywhere. So on one hand, we say God is everywhere, God is everything, and yet God has a form. Some say, well, how can God have a form? Why not? God has a name. Why not? Attributes. Why not? So God's forms, names, attributes, decorations, and pastimes are none different than God himself, who is present everywhere. That's why when you chant the names or these mantras, it's no different than being in the presence of God. May that Supreme Being always protect us from all calamities. Vishvarupa, who was the priest, the guru that they had now come to the Devas, says to them, O Indra, this mystic armor, he's using the word armor, just like that armor of God in the Bible. This is 3000 BC. Actually, it's from way before 3000 BC on planets outside of this planet here. So it refers to this mystic armor related to Narayan, Lord Narayan, has been described by me to you. By putting on this protective covering, you will certainly be able to conquer the leaders of the demons. If one employs this armor, whomever he sees with his eyes or touches with his feet is immediately freed from all above-mentioned dangers. One who employs this prayer is never disturbed or put in danger by the government, by plunderers, by evil demons, or any type of disease. So you see there's great power here, and I leave it to you to take advantage of that. All right, so now we come, our story goes further. Shukdev is narrating the story, and he says, now Vishwarup, the priest of the Devas, had 3 heads. You might say, oh, this is ridiculous. How can somebody have 3 heads? We are not talking about this reality of this earth. We're talking about other planets, other lifetimes, other possibilities. Keep an open mind. Anyway, it says here, with 1 head he drank somaras. Somaras was supposed to be this exhilarating drink that the Devas had. With another head he drank wine, and with the 3rd he ate food. Thus I have heard from authorities, he says. The Devas were related to him from his father's side, and the Asuras, that is the demons, were related to him through his mother. So he had a connection on both sides. The demigods were all in the mode of goodness, good people like that. They were related to him from his father's side. And the Asuras, the demons, were related to him through his mother. Now, when making offerings in the sacrificial fire, he called on both the Devas and the Asuras. But of course, he called on the Asuras discreetly. He didn't want the Devas to know because they had employed him, they'd asked him, they'd begged him to be their priest. But he was still going on making offerings to the Asuras, to the demonic beings. When Indra discovered this cheating, out of fear of the demons, he cut off Vishwarupa's 3 heads. He killed his guru. Indra then repented the killing of a Brahmin, a priest, and suffered for 1 year. He then distributed the karma for his sinful act amongst the earth, the water, the trees, and women. As a result, the earth had many deserts. Some trees began to excrete sap, which one must not drink, and water now had bubbles and foam, which one should also avoid drinking. And apparently, according to this particular text, it says that Indra had initially blessed women that they could enjoy sex even during pregnancy, as long as it was not injurious to the embryo. However, as a result of accepting his karma, women began to menstruate every month. I don't know. I'll just take it with a pinch of salt here. Vishwarup's father then performed ritualistic ceremonies to kill Indra. He was mad. His son had been killed. And any father would be. He prayed that the enemies of Indra would flourish and kill him. Indra now is the king of the demigods, right? So he's praying that the asuras, the demons who were their enemies, would kill Indra. His prayers in the sacrificial fire gave rise to a horrific, gigantic demon, Vritrasura. He was tall and blackish. He appeared like a burnt hill and was as lustrous as a bright array of clouds in the evening. The hair on his body, beard, and mustache were the color of melted copper, and his eyes were piercing like the midday sun. He appeared unconquerable, as if holding the universe on the points of his blazing trident. Dancing and shouting with a loud voice, he made the entire surface of the earth tremble as if from an earthquake. So, here is an artist's rendition of Vritrasura. There's much to learn from these things, so I want you to kind of just hear and try to understand all these things as they're narrated in the Bhagavatam. When Vritrasura yawned, he seemed to be trying to swallow the sky with his mouth, which was as deep as a cave. He seemed to be licking up all the stars in the sky with his tongue and eating the entire universe with his long, sharp teeth. Seeing this gigantic demon, everyone ran here and there in all directions in great fear. The demigods headed by Indra attacked him, but he swallowed all their weapons. Struck with wonder and disappointment upon seeing the strength of the demon, the demigods lost their own strength. They then called upon the supreme Godhead, Narayan, by worshipping him. So basically, they approach Narayan, Vishnu, there's different names, or Hari, he's got many names. And they then appealed to him. And then eventually, as they meditated on him, he eventually came in front and appeared first within their hearts and then in front of them. When they saw him smiling with eyes like the petals of lotuses grown in autumn, they were overwhelmed with happiness and immediately bowed to the ground. Then they slowly rose and offered him prayers. They said, "O Supreme Godhead, you are the time factor that destroys all karmic results in due course. You possess the chakra, the disc with which to kill all demons. You have many names. Your activities are impossible for us to understand. We therefore have nothing to offer you but our humble respects and obeisances." So they go on like this, praising him, saying that we are all your surrendered souls at your feet. Our minds are bound to your lotus feet in meditation by chains of love. Now please be sympathetic towards us and manifest your incarnation. In other words, they want him to do their work. And Vishnu replies, "I am certainly most pleased with you." They want him to kill this demon, right? Vritrasura. He says, "I'm certainly most pleased with you. One is fully purified by offering prayers in full knowledge. Although it is true that nothing is difficult for one to obtain when I am pleased with him, a pure devotee whose mind is exclusively fixed upon me does not ask me for anything but the opportunity to engage in loving devotional service." So in other words, you know how it is, most people go to God and they're asking stuff from God. "God, please help me with this problem, my exam paper, or my child, or my business, or my job, or help me get a job, or help me find a partner." What is he saying here? He's saying, this is not the way to approach me. A person who truly wants to come to me doesn't ask me for anything except the opportunity to engage in loving devotional service. You see the difference? The relationship with God is one of love. It's not a relationship of trying to get something from a powerful person. It's not for trying to get help, "Oh, do this for me, do that for me." And a lot of people believe that's what God is there for. God is their Santa Claus. God is the one who's going to fulfill their desires. God is the one who's going to solve their problems. It's not that God can't. But can you imagine having to listen to 8 billion people's prayers and solve all their problems? You go nuts. So that's why there's all these different demigods. They handle all of that stuff. You want something, you go to this demigod. You want something else, you go to that demigod. Don't bother God. The Supreme Being is only interested in one thing: love. Love. Pure, unalloyed, means unmotivated, uninterrupted, pure love. Love for the sake of love. Now, we don't know of such a thing. We have never heard of such a thing. We always have an agenda behind loving someone. We love them because I love you because you are this, because you have that, because you're nice to me, because you're beautiful, because you're rich, because you're whatever. But he's talking about pure love that is unmotivated. So he says, those who think material assets are the ultimate goal of life are called misers. They do not know the ultimate necessity of the soul. Think about it. What does the soul need? What is the ultimate necessity of your soul? You know what your body needs. You know what your mind wants. But what does your soul need? Are you your body? Are you your mind? Or are you your soul? If the real you is your soul, and if you do not know even what your soul needs, how are you going to be happy? You can only be happy when your soul is happy. If your body is happy, that's wonderful. But that's like, I'm polishing my car. And I'm thinking, if I polish my car, I'm going to be happy. No, my car might look great, but that doesn't mean I'm going to feel great. My body might look great. I might have the sexiest body, the most handsome or the beautiful or whatever, but it's not going to touch my soul. That's who I am. And I don't even know what my soul needs and wants and what it desires. So he says, if I was to give you what you're asking for, if one awards that which is desired by foolish people who are seeking material assets, then I would also be considered foolish. A pure devotee will never instruct one to engage, a pure devotee of God will never instruct one to engage in karmic activities for material enjoyment, just as an experienced physician would never encourage a patient to eat food injurious to his health, even if the patient desires it. I advise you, therefore, to approach the highly accomplished sage Dadichi and ask him for his body. That's a big ask for anybody, right? Give me your body. I need your body. See, first and foremost, there's two things to learn here, and they're big learnings. The first thing is Vishnu does not give them what they want. He tells them how to get what they want so that their needs may be met, but he himself is not going to do that work. He is not going to engage in that, in solving their problem. They're going to have to solve their own problem, just like we need to solve our own problems. It's not God's creation or business to solve our problems. No, we have certain desires. We have certain needs. It's our business to go deal with that. And when you want to know God, then come to him empty-handed, without those desires. Come to him to know him. Want to get to know that ultimate absolute truth, that ultimate being. And when you come, be willing to give all of yourself, because there is nothing less than that. And when you give all of yourself, truly, completely, with full surrender, then he pours his mercy and blessings into you. And that's the way this kind of love works. When you love someone, you give your all. A lot of people these days, when they love someone, they're like, let me just see how it goes. Let's see if it works out or not. They're testing it out. They don't come and just dive in and give all of themselves. We don't know how to love like that anymore. But people did, and we're capable of it. But we dive in fully, and we give everything we have to our beloved. But because we've been hurt and betrayed so many times, we now find it difficult to do that. It would be wonderful to meet people where this happened simultaneously, where one surrendered to the other and the other surrendered back. But it is with God, and there you will find that perfect and pure love that you seek, that you've always been seeking. You've been having a hard time finding it in any human, but you will definitely find it in God. Anyways, he's advising him now to approach this sage, the Adichi, and ask him for his body. That's a weird one. Now, what he explains to them is this. He says, due to chanting the Narayan Kvacha, that was that mantra we talked about earlier, which was also given to you, the demigods, his body has become very strong. He gave the Ashwini Kumaras the spiritual science for which they have become Jivan Mukta, or liberated in this life. If they ask him for his body on your behalf, he will surely give it because of affection. Do not doubt this. Then from his bones, Vishvakarma, the architect of the demigods, will prepare a thunderbolt invested with my spiritual power and strength. And only in this way can Vritrasura be killed. When he is killed, you will regain your strength, your weapons, and wealth. Thus there will be good fortune for all of you. Although Vritrasura can destroy the universe, do not fear that he will harm you. He is also my devotee and will never be envious of you. So that's so strange, isn't it? That someone who is demonic can also be a devotee of God. After saying this, Vishnu disappeared. So the demigods then begged the sage Dadichi for his body. And the sage smiled and jokingly began to instruct them. O elevated demigods, at the time of death, severe, unbearable pain takes away the consciousness of all living entities who have accepted material bodies. Don't you know about this pain? See, the demigods actually don't know about pain and suffering, because that's what it is about the heavenly planets. They experience a lot of pleasure. They have a lot of good times, right? And of course, when their good karma is exhausted, they have to come back into this world. But that's for another time. In this material world, the Dichi says, every living entity is very much addicted to his material body, struggling to keep his body forever. Everyone tries to protect it by all means, even at the sacrifice of all his possessions. So we will give anything to try to look young, to try to be healthy, to try to stay fit. We will do anything. But time comes and ravages our bodies. And whether you like it or not, the decay sets in. When you're in your 20s, you can't even imagine it will happen. When you're in your 30s, yeah, it's starting, but you know what? Nah, I can fight this. I can take this and I can take that and I can do this and I can do that. And my body will stay young. But come into your 40s, your 50s, your 60s, and the ravages of time are unavoidable. Right? And we do everything we can for this body without realizing that it's just a dress. It isn't the real you. So he says, struggling to keep this body forever, everyone tries to protect it by all means. Therefore, who would be prepared to deliver his body to anyone, even if it were demanded by Lord Vishnu? So who would be willing to give up his body, even if God asked you to give up your body, would you? The demigods replied, O exalted Brahmin, pious persons like you, whose activities are praiseworthy, are very kind and affectionate to people in general. They give everything, including their bodies, for the benefit of others. See how they're trying to convince him? Dadichi says, just to hear from you about spiritual principles, I refuse to offer my body at your request. Now, although my body is extremely dear to me, I must give it up for your better purposes, since I know that it will leave me today or tomorrow. One who has no compassion for humanity in its suffering and does not sacrifice his impermanent body for a higher cause of spiritual principles is certainly pitied even by immovable beings such as trees and rocks and mountains. If one is unhappy to see the distress of other living beings and happy to see their happiness, his spiritual principles are considered imperishable by exalted persons. Now, I really want to unpack this for you and really focus in here. If one is unhappy to see the distress of other living beings, what is that called? Empathy, right? So if one is empathetic, you're unhappy to see the distress of other living beings and happy to see their happiness, not envious because of their happiness, but happy, genuinely happy to see their happiness, then such a person's spiritual principles are considered imperishable. That means that once you've attained that state of consciousness, no one can take it away from you. See? That is a symptom that you have been growing spiritually. It's not enough to just be unhappy for the distress of others, but one must also be truly happy to see their happiness. Keep that in mind. This body, which is food for jackals and tigers after death, does not actually do any good for me because I am a spirit soul. It is usable only for a short time and may perish at any moment. The body and its possessions, its riches and relatives must all be engaged for the benefit of others, or else they will become sources of tribulation and misery. Again, note his wisdom here. The body and its possessions, its riches and relatives must all be engaged for the benefit of others, or else they will be sources of tribulation and misery. So when we're trying to hoard and just do stuff for ourselves, it's all me, 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 you know how it is today in today's time, then yes, our body and our possessions become a source of a lot of trouble, a lot of hard work, and ultimately a lot of misery because we lose the very things that we've been so attached to. So speaking this way, the great sage Dadichi placed his soul at the feet of the Supreme Godhead. He controlled his senses. So in other words, what does it mean he placed his soul at the feet of the Supreme God? It means he surrendered to God and said, I give my life to you. Take me as you wish. He controlled his senses. He cut all his material bonds and became absorbed in trance. Then he gave up his body at will. This is the power of yoga. This is the yogic way. He gave up his body at will. Then Vishwakarma, the architect of the demigods, made a thunderbolt from Dadichi's bones and gave it to Indra. Indra, angrily and with great force, attacked Vritrasura, who was surrounded by the leaders of the demonic armies. Thus, at the end of Satya Yuga, so there are 4 ages talked about in the Vedas, the first of which is Satya Yuga, the age of truth. Satya means truth, the age of truth. That is the golden age. Then there comes Treta Yuga, and things start to gradually decay. There starts to be more adharma, activities that are not in alignment with spirit, with soul, with God. Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, and then we are now in the final stages, Kali Yuga. This is known to be the most degraded age of all. This is the most degraded time. Each of these ages lasts thousands and even tens of thousands of years. And so will Kali Yuga. Anyway, at the end of Satya Yuga, a fierce battle took place between the demigods and the demons on the banks of the Narmada river. Surrounded by his demigods, Indra shone so brightly that his effulgence was intolerable to the demons. Now I think I'm going to leave the battle and what happened afterwards and all the stuff about Vritrasura. There's so many interesting things about Vritrasura that you need to learn about. And it'll be eye-opening. And we'll leave that for next time. I think for now, we'll just go into any of the comments any of you have. And let's see what we've got. Keep in mind that if those of you that are on the Zoom call, if you'd like to write something in the chat, or if you'd like to say something, just raise your hand and I'll bring you on. Meanwhile, I'll start with Seely. She's got some good pointers here. Self-sabotage, or that of others, is rooted in emotional darkness, feeling trapped and insecure. Recently, many lives were lost in the chaos of destruction by forces of nature, earthquake and floods, and more. Yeah. Self-sabotage, or that of others, is rooted in emotional darkness. Yes. So there is an emotional darkness, definitely, is what we call the shadow. There's emotional darkness. And then there is darkness. There is that which is pure darkness. And that pure darkness, because I never believed in it until I actually came across it. And when I would do hypnosis with people, it would show up. And I'd talk and I'd find out what is its nature, what are its qualities. And as I discovered that, I began to recognize there truly is something, and it's there in most of us, that is dark. And it's battling against us. And it does not want our best interest. And if we don't stay in charge of our mind, then this is the battlefield where that whole conflict takes place. It's very important. And we can get easily deluded and carried away by our thoughts, by our desires, by our needs. And we can believe what our mind tells us. But it's so important to stop believing what your mind tells you. Stop. You're not your mind. Your mind is not your best friend. Your mind does not know what is best for you. Your mind does not even know you. It does not know who you are. It cannot relate to the real you and what is best for you. Only your soul can do that. Only God can do that. To get in touch with that, you need to be in a state of no mind. You need to learn to quiet your mind. And in that state of quiet and in that state of stillness and in that state of inner peace, you will be able to hear the tiny whispers of your soul and the wise guidance of your Param Atma, the super soul, or the part of God that is within you. Seems that Shiva has been unleashing destruction, be it of an individual or en masse. This force and other deities seem to mercilessly take lives. Why do souls come only to be taken out? We're all taken out. Keep in mind that. We are all on the verge of death. We are all sitting in that place where death can come any moment, any time. So the idea that we are alive is actually just an illusion. We are walking towards death at every moment. Sometimes it comes faster, sometimes it comes slower. Sometimes it happens in a few years, a few days, in a few moments. The important thing to understand is this. Why am I here in the first place? Who am I? And what does it take to get out of here? If we ask these questions, and if we pursue this knowledge, we will find what it takes. We will be able to get the guidance of a true spiritual guide, guru, and the teachings that will help us elevate our consciousness to the point where we no longer come back into this world. But yes, this world, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, is dukhalayam, a place of suffering, a place that is where everything is temporary. Even the suffering is temporary. Then there will be pleasure, then there will be suffering, then there will be pleasure, then there will be suffering. Everything is moving in these cycles of duality. Happiness and distress, constantly changing from one to the other. Nothing is constant here. Everything is, well, except for change. That is constantly happening. So, if we're going to invest our energy in wondering, why aren't things peaceful all the time out here? Well, that's not the nature of this world. We came to a world that is full of chaos. It's the nature of this world. Everything here decays. Everything here goes towards chaos. I mean, if I leave a garden untended, it goes into chaos. If I leave my house untended and go away for a few months, it goes into chaos. Spider webs will come up, dust will come up everywhere. It'll be a mess. I have to do a major cleanup after I come back. And that's true for everything. Entropy is the bigger concept, that everything decays, including this body, including plants, including your possessions. everything. So the idea is not to make it so that we're happy. This pursuit of happiness is the biggest lie that has been said to us on this planet. There is no such thing as the pursuit of happiness. That is the pursuit of illusion. That is the pursuit of suffering. The pursuit of happiness is the pursuit of suffering. We want neither happiness nor unhappiness. We want simply to be who we are. And once you are there, there is no unhappiness and there is no happiness. There is this beautiful, steady state. It has been disturbing to witness this from the media, unavoidable to feel such sadness and compassion of much loss. How can one live in peace among such times? Prayers alone seem hollow. You're absolutely right. Compassion is natural. It is very natural. As we advance spiritually, compassion comes very naturally. When we see people suffering, it is very natural to feel compassionate for them. As we said earlier, that a person who feels the pain of others, but also their happiness, is a person who has truly advanced spiritually. So your compassion is showing your level of growth, and it's a good thing. And there are others who have no compassion. And there are others who don't even care, and they're out there inducing those wars, creating that chaos. They are in the mayhem. But once you understand it is the nature of this world, this is how things work out here, right? It's just like going to the forest and you understand, oh, so there are creatures in here and this is their habitat and this is what they do. They hunt each other. That's the nature of the forest. What can you do? It's just how it is. It's a very cruel setup. And for those who are compassionate and kind and loving and gentle-hearted, for us it's very hard to be able to see this. Very, very hard. Thank you for pointing out the focus on the soul, not the mind. Thank you for all your questions. I really appreciate them. Anybody else have any more questions? Would love to hear from you. All right. So be back next week. We'll have more news about what happened and the battle between Indra and Vritasura. And there's going to be some really interesting twists and turns in that. So be back for more. I'll see you next week. Hare Krishna.